Biden or Trump? Who had a greater impact on America? A question that sparks vigorous debate. In this video, we'll delve into their respective responses to the COVID-19 pandemic, their economic policies, and strides in infrastructure. We'll also examine their contributions to criminal justice reform and their unique approaches to foreign policy. No stone will be left unturned as we contrast the policies and achievements of Biden and Trump. Join us as we contrast the policies and achievements of Biden and Trump in a balanced way. When Biden took office, the world was in the throes of a global pandemic. The COVID-19 crisis was an uninvited guest, and addressing it was no small feat. Yet, President Biden rose to the occasion, making the public health crisis his top priority. In a world where the virus was spreading like wildfire, Biden's administration put forth a comprehensive vaccination strategy. The aim? To get a substantial percentage of the population vaccinated and build up a strong line of defense against the virus. This was not just a strategy, but a war cry against the pandemic. The goal was clear: vaccinate as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. But President Biden knew that the battle wasn't just about health, it was also about the economy. The pandemic had left businesses shuttered and individuals struggling. The American Rescue Plan, signed into law in March of 2021, was a beacon of hope in these trying times. The plan provided economic relief and support, offering a lifeline to those drowning in the aftermath of the pandemic. This law was more than just a piece of legislation. It was a promise of rescue, a commitment to recovery. The American Rescue Plan was a lifeboat, offering support for businesses and individuals alike. It aimed to ease the burden of the pandemic, providing a safety net for those affected by the crisis. And so, Biden's response to COVID-19 was twofold: a health strategy and an economic plan. His administration tackled the virus head-on, rolling out a vaccination strategy to curb the spread. At the same time, they provided economic relief to those hit hardest by the pandemic. Biden's response to COVID-19 was a testament to his commitment to the American people. It demonstrated his administration's determination to not only contain the virus, but also to ensure the recovery of the American economy. Through these actions, Biden aimed to bring the pandemic under control and provide economic relief. His response was a reminder that in the face of adversity, we can rise, we can recover, and we can rebuild. Infrastructure was another key area of focus for Biden. In 2021, Biden made a significant push for a bipartisan infrastructure bill known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This act was designed with a vision to revitalize the country's physical infrastructure. It sought to address a broad range of issues, including the condition of roads and bridges, public transit systems, the reach of broadband services, and the promotion of clean energy. The bill's proponents argue that such an investment is not only necessary for the upkeep and modernization of the nation's infrastructure, but also crucial for long-term economic growth and competitiveness. This act is seen as a way of creating jobs, stimulating local economies, and making the United States a more attractive place for businesses to operate. Moreover, by investing in clean energy, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act also aligns with Biden's environmental agenda. This legislation seeks to promote sustainable practices and reduce the country's carbon footprint, a step towards combating climate change. Critics, however, have raised concerns about the cost of such an ambitious project. They question whether the returns on this investment will justify the expenditure and how it will be financed. Despite these reservations, the bill represents a significant commitment to improving the country's infrastructure and addressing environmental concerns. With this legislation, Biden sought to invest in America's future. On the international stage, Biden made significant moves as well. In a bid to re-establish the United States' commitment to global cooperation, the Biden administration prioritized re-engaging with international partners. This approach reflected a clear departure from the previous administration's more isolationist tendencies. A significant example of this shift was the United States' re-entry into the Paris Agreement. This global pact, aimed at addressing the urgent issue of climate change, had been abandoned by the Trump administration in 2017. However, Biden recognized the importance of international collaboration in tackling this global crisis and made the decision to rejoin the agreement shortly after taking office. But the administration didn't stop at mere participation. It went a step further, setting ambitious targets for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. These goals reflect a commitment to not only engage with the global community on climate change, but to also lead by example. This focus on climate change is strategic. It's about more than just saving the planet. It's about economic opportunities, public health, and national security. It's about acknowledging that the effects of climate change are already here and that the United States needs to be part of the solution. Biden's administration underscored the importance of international collaboration and climate change action. It's a stance that emphasizes the interconnectedness of today's world and the shared responsibility we all have in safeguarding our planet's future. Switching gears, let's explore Trump's economic policies. The Trump era, spanning from January 2017 to January 2021, saw a robust pre-pandemic economy. A notable highlight of his presidency was the significant tax cut legislation passed in 2017, known as the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. This legislation was designed with the intention to stimulate economic growth and job creation. The theory behind it was simple. By reducing the tax burden on corporations and the wealthy, these groups would have more money to invest in businesses, thereby creating jobs and driving economic expansion. And indeed, supporters of Trump's policies point to the low unemployment rates and robust stock market performance during his tenure as evidence of their success. However, it's important to note that this economic growth did not occur in a vacuum. Trump inherited an economy that was already on the upswing following the recovery from the Great Recession under the Obama administration. It's a bit like taking the baton in the last lap of a relay race. You're in a strong position, but you didn't run the whole race. Critics of Trump's tax cuts argue that they disproportionately benefited the wealthy. While corporations and the richest Americans saw significant tax reductions, the middle and lower classes received much smaller cuts. This has led to concerns about increasing income inequality in America, a problem that has been growing for several decades. Additionally, detractors point out that these tax cuts have contributed to a ballooning federal deficit. By reducing government revenue, the tax cuts have led to increased borrowing, which could have long-term economic consequences. So, while Trump's economic policies did result in some positive outcomes, they were not without controversy. The impact of the tax cuts in particular continues to be a subject of heated debate among economists and policymakers. Trump's policies aimed to stimulate growth and job creation, though they were not without their critics. Beyond economics, Trump also made strides in criminal justice reform and foreign policy. One of his administration's significant accomplishments was the passage of the First Step Act in 2018. This bipartisan criminal justice reform bill aimed to reduce mass incarceration, a deeply entrenched issue in the United States. The legislation tackled a myriad of issues, from sentencing reform to improving prison conditions and enhancing rehabilitation programs. This reform not only signaled a step away from the punitive approach that has dominated American criminal justice for decades, but also recognized the importance of rehabilitation over retribution. But Trump's influence wasn't limited to domestic policy. In the international arena, he adopted an America First approach, focusing on renegotiating trade deals to protect American interests. Trump's administration engaged in high-stakes negotiations with China, a global economic powerhouse. These negotiations eventually led to the signing of the Phase 1 trade deal. This agreement was touted as a victory for American businesses, with China committing to purchase an additional $200 billion of American goods and services over 2 years. Trump's tough stance on trade was not without controversy. While some applauded his efforts to protect American businesses, critics expressed concerns about the potential negative impacts on the global economy and diplomatic relations. They argued that his approach could spark trade wars, disrupt global supply chains, and strain relationships with key trading partners. In spite of these criticisms, there's no denying that Trump's presidency was a period of significant policy shifts, both domestically and internationally. His approaches may have been unorthodox and his policies divisive, but they undeniably left a lasting impact on the American landscape. Trump's presidency was marked by bold moves in both domestic and international arenas. So, Biden or Trump, who had a greater impact on America? Biden's response to COVID-19, infrastructure investment, and climate change efforts contrast with Trump's economic policies, criminal justice reform, and foreign policy. But quantifying impact is a complex task, encompassing a myriad of factors, from the immediate effects of policy decisions to the long-term shifts in national and global landscapes. In the end, the answer may depend on one's perspective and priorities. Both leaders in their own ways have left indelible marks on American history.